I saw something, this is so off topic, but I saw something and they were like, forget flat Earth, it's glizzy Earth, and it was just a giant hot dog shaped Earth and it gave me, it made me laugh because I was thinking about it with this episode and I was just like, that is harmless misinformation, but like, it can have real Tune into a cleaner future with Pollution Evolution.
We are your hosts,
Faith
and Kimberly, with our guest today, Erin.
Hi.
To follow us along on this journey, you can tune in every Saturday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you'd like to get more background information or just like some behind the scenes stuff, you can follow our Instagram at Pollution Evolution Podcast and our TikTok at Pollution Evolution.
So today we will be discussing climate misinformation, but before we get into that, we want to talk a little bit about Erin, and if you'd like to introduce yourself and why you decided to come on the pod today.
Hi, I'm Erin Ryskowski. I am a graduate of the University of Alabama in environmental science, and I got my master's in architecture and urbanism and climate action, which is a convoluted way of saying green building, from University College Dublin. And I am looking forward to working with the two lovely ladies in the future.
Well, thank you for being here. I think that today we're going to have a little bit more of a loose script for our listeners. So we are going to talk about climate misinformation. So let's go ahead and start by Faith, if you want to get started for us.
Yeah, so we made this episode because we've been noticing a rise of anti-intellectualism in the U.S. There has been a large attack against scientists beginning from the early 2010s, and it's growing and growing each day. And we want our listeners to be equipped with the tools to be able to like cut through all of the noise and see the truth and the reality of situations that they'll be presented with, especially when it comes to climate change, because we work in the field, so we obviously know like what's what, but if you're getting your information from second, third, or even like fourth sources, you might kind of get lost in a lot of it, and also in a lot of ideology driven media. So we're kind of doing this episode to help you guys cut through that and give you some tips and tricks to identify good sources and know how to move forward and feel empowered in your research and knowledge journey.
So I think before we get started, all of us are from the academic background, and so we've experienced finding misinformation. Erin, do you have a story that you can think of off the top of your head of finding misinformation or seeing people spread misinformation?
So actually a close friend of mine did his master's thesis on misinformation, and this example always stuck with me. It's a little out of our field, but Russia has multiple cases claimed that the U.S. created certain diseases at this one specific military base in Maryland. And it's hilarious because they always use the same script and they always use the same sources to sort of disseminate this ideology. And it's crazy because I always hear Americans like bring these things up to me. You know, I'll hear someone say, oh, America created COVID in a lab, or America created AIDS in a lab. And I know exactly where that's coming from. And it's crazy that it spreads so well and so far. Terrifying.
Yeah, that is really terrifying because it's like billion-dollar machines driving this level of misinformation to just like normal, everyday working class Americans. And like, what chance do we stand if we like can't identify it, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, those countries, they will even, you know, entire labs devoted to bots to spreading this misinformation. And that's people's day job, you know? And even in American media, obviously, we see a lot of misinformation.
I mean, like, even recently in this campaign trail, the, like, horrible rhetoric that was being spread about our Haitian brothers and sisters and, like,
Yes.
I mean, I'm not even going to repeat it because, like, it makes me sick. It's racist drivel, but things like that, people did take it serious, and there were genuine threats against those communities because of misinformation being spread. So it's not just as simple as, like, oh, this is a fun joke. It's much deeper, and, like, it has long-lasting impacts.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I think another part of it is building a disregard for issues that are very important. That's one of the big things that happens. It's always something that's important. Like right now, measles in Texas. That everybody is like, well, vaccines aren't important because it's not going to save my child. I know that one of the children that sadly passed away from it was unvaccinated, and they were asked if they would have changed their decision to vaccine their child, and they said no. And it's because that rhetoric is just, it's so ingrained into our daily lives. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, everything has all of this information somewhere, where if you get stuck on that page one day, your algorithm's going to show that to you consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead, Erin.
No, I was just going to say, and we're still combating, the most basic of conspiracy theories, the flat earth, the space. It's hard out there.
It is hard. I saw something, this is so off topic, but I saw something and they were like, forget flat earth, it's glizzy earth, and it was just a giant hot dog shaped earth and it gave me it made me laugh because I was thinking about it with this episode, and I was just like, that is harmless misinformation, but like it can have real I'll have to find it so we can put it in. But with that, on like the topic of flat earth, getting into climate change misinformation is something that like I feel really passionate about, because like during my freshman year of college, I did a huge paper on how global climate change is going to affect the water cycle in the Great Plains region. The part of Texas me and Kim went to school in, and that Kim is at currently, is experiencing a huge drought issue. Like the water in the ground is considered fossil water, and it's actually considered a non-renewable resource because of how intense the drought conditions have become. And like we really don't have enough water in the state of Texas right now. Like drought is not even the word I would use to describe how dry things are. And I remember in that project, a lot of the things I saw and found are coming true now. And the teacher, who was actually the leader of the honors program, literally told me that the IPCC, climate journals, peer-reviewed, respected people were not credible sources of information, that I used misinformation to do this project. And I also, funny enough, I did get an A on it. She said this in front of the entire class when we were presenting. And I remember going back that day and being like, what makes a good climate article? What makes good climate research? Like, what should I do? What do I need? Because like clearly I was missing something, because this is somebody that has went to school, that has their doctorate. And I'm like, if I'm missing something, then like I need to dig deeper. And upon digging deeper, I realized that like I wasn't the one with misinformation. It was her. And by doing that, I actually found like different methods and study ways. So I thought we could like kind of break those down and discuss them a little bit today.
Yeah.
So there's this acronym named CRAAP, or CRAAP. And it stands for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And it's essentially like when you're doing a research paper, I don't know, guys, what's the first step? Like if you guys were given just like, do a research topic on nitrogen, what would be your first steps that you guys would do?
I think, just from my perspective, I always go for the health effects. So I would look at like health effects of nitrogen, but I would also filter my search to where it's at least like 5 years back. Like it's not like 1980s journals that I'm referencing. Because specifically like with health information, we get so much new information so fast that you can't, like, a 1980 article may be the only article that exists on something, but that doesn't mean it's the best information.
And like with that kind of covers like the core tenements of CRAAP. I don't think that's actually how you say it, but that's what I'm going to call it. But it stands for currency. So when is it? When is it like 5 years old, 20 years old? How relevant is it? Like, is it relevant to what you're searching, or are you looking up like the effect of asbestos or something? And is it accurate? Is it like, what's the purpose? What purpose is it serving? Like, you're asking yourself, like, even before you really thought about it, you've already done the CRAAP process and found good results.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really that simple.
And I think it's worth...
Like, a lot of us do that kind of intuitively, but even in, like, asking a simple question, like, when you go to Google search, it's important what you Google search for. You know, redefine the parameters to find the information you need to answer the question. So.
Yeah, dive more into that, Erin. That's a really important point.
Well, shoot, I don't know where to go.
Oh my gosh.
The avenues to go down.
Yeah, no, just go for it.
Okay, so like for me, if I was answering that question, I tend to look at the social science side of our fields. So I would probably ask myself, you know, when was nitrogen first classified as a pollutant? You know, what was the first science that came out on that? How worried are people about nitrogen today? What is the response when people feel like their community is being threatened with nitrogen pollution, you know? Those sorts of questions.
Yeah. And with that, like, what kind of people or, like, sources do you typically look for? Like, when you're asking those questions, do you look at, like, where's the author going? What domain is it from? Things like that as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really like the scientific journals, right? As opposed to like industry research. You know, gonna have a particular bias. But something I just thought of that I wanted to talk about was Google itself. I feel like these days, and I don't know how true this is from a tech standpoint, but I feel like sometimes there's specific information that Google makes it really hard to find, you know, particular questions. And you're fed a lot of fluffer information to kind of dissuade you from taking the time to find the answer you're looking for.
Yeah. It's because of SEO, like search engine optimization. Industries and companies can pay to push or like use different techniques to push themselves up higher. And like they can like essentially work to like crush real information. Like obviously a lot of people do not do it for that reason. It's usually a marketing tool, but like that is a tool that can, in the wrong hands, can be responsible for some of that. Yeah, it's, and like with all of that, that kind of questions like authority too, like the last A in CRAAP. I'm just going to circle it. It's CRAAP.
I love CRAAP. I'm team CRAAP.
We love CRAAP. But it's important to check who the authority is. Like Erin said, a scientific versus industrial journals are going to say very different things. We have a case study today that we're going to discuss that will really demonstrate how there can be some discrepancies in real world data versus things that are being reported. Like, you know, and I'm excited to dive into that, but we're not quite there yet. And so with all of this, a lot of people are not getting their information from Google or using scientific journals. Like a lot of it is like you see a TikTok, you see an Insta, or in my mom's case, you see a Facebook post, and then they take that as law. What do you guys think we could do to help combat that, especially in the climate space? Because I see a lot of rhetoric like, oh, if it's snowing right now, global warming can't be real. Oh my God, how can there be a water crisis if we had a hurricane? Like I've seen so many, like just so many things, or even just like my professor telling me that the international the IPCC is not a good source. Like, I don't know. Well, I guess I do know, but I'm curious to see what you guys think.
It's so funny you bring up the temperature on a given day, because I had created a list before this podcast of, like, you know, just points in case I needed a thought stem. And one of them on there is, you know, things people have argued against climate panic to me in the past, and the temperature on any given day in any given place is on there.
Yeah.
And like, but I was talking to a friend yesterday to answer your question, and he said to me, what the climate community really needs to focus on is the granularity of the issue. You know, it's so often presented as climate change, and not a specific impact and not a specific solution. Mm-hmm. And I think focusing on the details is something that's really important, instead of always like kind of trying to draw it back to this big overarching problem that is, you know, really scary to talk about. And it makes it less digestible when it's presented in that way. So I think one thing the climate community can do is more accurately communicate about particular issues and their particular solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to add to that is providing information in a way that's actually accessible to the public. As scientists, I think that we read so many research articles, we write so many papers that we get stuck using this kind of jargon that's difficult for other people to understand. And so, like, you'll go out and you'll say, like, oh, the atmospheric pollution is such and such, and like, you need to be concerned because these are amounts or like these numbers or whatever. Well, with air pollution specifically, you can't see it. So how is somebody going to believe you when you say, like, there's a really bad air quality problem here if they can't see what's going on? And so I think that goes to your point of, like, we have to provide, not just like show them what the problem is, but provide solutions, because it can also get to the point where people get overwhelmed by the information and they're like, well, it's just too much for me to think about, so I'm just going to ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think, again, something you guys have talked to me about, Faith specifically, is the reading level. You know, there has to be information presented at like a third grade reading level, right? Mm-hmm. So that we can talk to the third graders, so that we can talk to the sixth graders, and so we can talk to those who don't have 3 college degrees about how nitrogen pollution is affecting the atmosphere.
Exactly. Like, on that note, I think that that's why misinformation is able to spread, because what science has not figured out, those bots and the people, the governments that are running these mass misinformation campaigns, know how to reach those people that science is leaving out, know how to go to the communities of those who might not have the same access to education or knowledge that we got, like, just by the privilege of where we were born, you know? And I think that, like, when science really starts to understand that, like, yes, you can be smart, but if you're smart and nobody knows what the heck you're saying, what does it matter? If you can't disseminate that, what does it matter? If, like, you have done all this research, but you go in front of the public and they leave having no clue what you've done, what does it matter?
Yeah, that's just like...
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, I was going to say, it's just like being a teacher and speaking at a level where your students can't understand you. They're not learning anything. So, like, if you're going to a community and saying, here are your problems, and you're not using like language they understand, even if there's a language barrier, like, that often happens in these communities, is there's a language barrier and it's not, like, they don't do things to meet that language barrier. And I think that it's also a failure on some of our regulatory agencies' part, because they're very vague with everything they say regarding climate change.
Very long, if you will.
Like, company called Rogue Water, and they would do that. They would take city water reports and, you know, make them cute and understandable and make them fun and engaging. And I thought that was so cool, because, you know, so few of us are reading our water reports.
Mm-hmm.
And we should know.
We should know. It's important. And, like, Kim was telling me earlier today about an instance where being able to know and understand information is very, very important, because there's something going on in her town. There's always something going on in her town. But like the new thing, guys, we promise. And as she was telling me, I kept thinking to myself, like, if you do not have like a certain level of education or expertise, how in the heck are you going to be able to do anything or participate in this? So do you want to like go into it?
Yeah, so my husband and I went out for breakfast this morning, and they had a Spanish newspaper there. He's trying to pick up reading Spanish more, so he picked it up and he was looking through it, and he sees a TCUQ logo on the page, and he is like, okay, I don't read Spanish very well, but I know what that logo is. And he was like, this is a notice. And I said, okay, that's odd. So I start reading the notice, and it's talking about one of the plants here, is going to have not new construction. They made that clear. It's not a new construction. They are, fixing some part of their equipment. But it doesn't tell you what pollutant they're talking about, what equipment they're fixing. They just tell you where the facility is located, and that they're applying for a permit. And then they go on to say, if you have a problem and you want to request a hearing, this is in like 11 point, maybe 9 point font, like tiny font on this newspaper. And it says, here is the address to contact us. And then it follows that by saying, if you are going to make a complaint, make sure that you have the information on which pollutant, which facility, which area you live in, why you think you'll be affected, what reasoning you have for like opposing it. And I'm sitting there reading it, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, nothing against my hometown, but a lot of the people that have gotten educated don't come back here. And so how is somebody, many of them have a high school like education level, how are they going to go out and read that and say, oh, well, I need to act on this. I need to go home and put together a scientific report on why it's not safe for them to give them a new permit?
Well, first off, the insult of the font size. I mean, seriously. Like, we as citizens, we have the right to, we're supposed to live in a democracy, right? We're supposed to get to help shape the world we live in and have some say in its regulations. And just to, see that even in the font size, they are thinking about how can we dissuade people from participating in the democratic process, especially as it regards their health and their children's health.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Erin, if you know, so the reason we're here taking care of my grandma is she unfortunately has dementia. And I don't know if you listened to our carbon black episode, but carbon black is very pervasive here. We have field techs here who sample the snow, and once it melts, it's completely black. Like, you cannot see through that. And carbon black is linked to Alzheimer's and dementia because it ruins your blood-brain barrier.
I'm curious, my grandma also passed away, or my grandma passed away from dementia. She suffered with it quite a while. Do you know anything about, is there a pesticide connection? Because...
So anything that can be considered a neurotoxin can actually affect them. I've been reading a book about it, about Alzheimer's in general, and there are many beliefs. Whenever the book came out, they didn't fully understand where Alzheimer's came from. Some believe that it is a gene that's dormant in many people, that it triggers on at some point. Some believe that it is environmentally related, and that your weakened immune system overall leads to that gene being able to be turned on. But it's a very complicated disease, and I'm very sorry for your loss. I know that must have been hard.
I'm sorry to hear she's suffering from the same thing. I know how challenging it is for the family, so I'm sending you a big hug, Kim.
Thank you. So yeah, that's why we thought it was very important to bring this up. And like, while we're on the topic of my hometown, I was reading the report again on my hometown. And something that we shared with Erin earlier is in this report, one of the facilities is if they keep their own flare on, they are allowed to only emit 420 tons a year, or pounds per hour, rather, of sulfur dioxide. So 420 pounds per hour. If they decide to replace that flare, then their emissions are allowed to go up to 806 pounds per hour. And to me, I obviously wasn't the one that did the calculations, but that doesn't make very much sense.
It's just not. You could claim a new technology is going to be cleaner, but the numbers speak for themselves. It's going to pollute twice as much.
Mm-hmm. And my question is, where are the air pollution control devices? Why are they even outputting that much sulfur dioxide to begin with? Why is there, what are the policies that they have in place to protect you guys? Because, Erin, if you haven't seen Borger, but the facilities are built in the town. You can see them from pretty much everywhere in town.
There's one down the road.
Kim's parents' house, we can see it from the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's right there. And with all of this, it just keeps coming back to the fact, who does this benefit besides the people emitting? Because if we are putting out, the effects of these things are known. You can easily find the health effects of sulfur dioxide, carbon black, and a whole host of other pollutants. And the destruction of the blood-brain barrier is also very well known. And so, I just keep coming back to the idea of, if we know this, where are the protections for the people, and why are we allowing the emissions to continue to grow each year?
And the very sad thing is that you, my husband noted, you drive around town, and whenever you're in the center of town, you can't see the plants because they completely surround the town. And so people people go to the park, there's kids playing in the soil, playing in the sand, and it's not even a mile away from the facility.
Yeah. And pollutants transferred, wet and dry deposition is occurring pretty much every time those turn on. And that's exactly what they're playing in, is the same thing that is being emitted without any recourse at this point, is according to the SIP, according to the governmental documents.
Mm-hmm.
Faith, in the interest of digestibility, can you explain wet and dry deposition for our listeners?
Actually, we have a whole episode on it.
Oh.
I'm shamelessly plugging. If you guys are more interested in all of these topics, go back and listen to We Are Barbie Girls in a Polluted World to hear about carbon black, pollution, and the health effects. Listen to its radon sulfuric acid hallelujah to learn about wet and dry deposition. I am shamelessly plugging. Please go watch these episodes. And also go listen to our chromium hexavalent episode to learn more about drinking water-based pollution in this area, because those are all pollutants that are of concern in this area, this area that we're talking about.
Just because I'm enjoying the titles so much, what's the title of the water episode on Chromium?
Oh my god. What the bromium is happening with chromium.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
I'm living for these titles.
Yeah, this week's one is going to be called There's No Pollution in Bossing Say.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I forgot what we were talking about.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh no, you're fine.
You were talking about how you can see, the wet and dry deposition.
Oh, yeah.
Sulfur dioxide.
And
yeah.
nitrate. There's a couple of pollutants, but SO2 is our main.
Because SO2 is the only one they're regulated for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the rest of them are unregulated. So even if there is more activity occurring, the regulatory bodies are not quite as concerned with them, even if they do pose carcinogenic and or neurotoxic risk to the town.
And here's a fun fact. They have a monitor here for sulfur dioxide. Well, I contacted EPA like a couple years ago because I was like, okay, there's a particulate matter problem in this town. Like, if you look it up on satellite, there's literally a black ring of like ground, like on the ground, because of how much has settled. And they said, well, they're in compliance, and they gave me the coordinates for their particulate matter monitor. It is over an hour away.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And see, you know, if you aren't in the scientific community, you just see, well, we're in compliance with that regulation.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be so easy to explain to people that, you know, it matters where the monitor is. People are intentionally putting the monitor far away from where your children are playing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing around. And that number has no impact on where we're at. But people get clear graphs that demonstrate that to them, that demonstrate, you know, how the pollutant is transported and dispersed and how it matters with monitors.
Well, one sad thing is, so the industries here are required to model their emissions. They're required to model where the plume is going to go. So like where that pollution is going to transport. I have a photo, I think I have it saved somewhere. I'll put it on our YouTube video, but it shows the plume covers a daycare facility.
Yeah, and the kids are black sometimes when they come
like their hands, they come in and their hands are black.
So can the people in your town get access to this report? Like if they wanted to find that, what would they have to be searching, and, you know, how would they get access to it?
So I look it up by using TCEQ Hutchinson County SIP, SIP. That's the name of the report. It's, they're required, well, funnily enough, they published it, I believe, in 2017. It's not up for renewal until 2026. And that's, again, on only one pollutant. And I would say, like, I did tell, like, community members at one point, like, if you are concerned, like, reach out to TCEQ, reach out to EPA. Everybody responded to me that contacted the EPA, and they said, I got this message, and it was an automated message that every single person got the exact same message.
I got it. I got it. Yeah. So, like, at this point, with all of this is why me and Kim and Erin have all, like, felt so compelled to start working in the environment and start doing things for Saucon and bringing attention to these issues, because, like, this gross level of misinformation that's being delivered is directly impacting everyone that lives in those towns and towns just like it. And there needs to be more awareness of these issues and actual scientific change being brought to make these places cleaner.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that comes from, I mean, talking to your community members, going back to, like, episode 1, like, in this town, there's a lady that takes care of my grandma in the mornings. She has been a caretaker for, like, 15 years. She is 85 years old, bless her heart. She has taken care of almost every single patient she has taken care of has been younger than her, other than my grandma, and they have passed away. And she said she worked in a nursing home, and maybe like 75% of the people there have dementia. But the thing is people in town, it's like they're ashamed to an extent of being sick, and so they don't tell their neighbor, like, I'm suffering from this. Like, hey, like, I need help because we're going through this. Like, it's more of, oh my God, like, this happened to us. We need to seclude ourselves. And I think that's why, like, in episode 1, we made it so apparent, like, you need to talk to people, figure out, like, are these health problems, like, a entire citywide problem? Because if they are, that's not normal. That's not genetics. That's not, like...
And I think it's kind of set up for them to not talk to each other, for the community to be fractured. Because if everybody starts to realize, like, XYZ, like, we all are suffering from these same things, people are going to start to wonder, like, okay, maybe it's not just, like, a one-off thing. Maybe there is a bigger problem. Maybe there's a larger cause to this. And so I think that, like, a lot of, not only your town, but a lot of towns really benefit from lack of community engagement and, like, lack of community care, because, like, community care is survival, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that's been, seriously on the decline in America for several decades now. And it's really terrifying because it makes it easier to control us politically. Mm-hmm. It makes it easier to take advantage of us actively and environmentally. So you have to think about who that, fracturing community benefits. But that is something we can take action on the individual level, mm-hmm. as simple as bringing your neighbor soup when they're sick, giving them a ride. Mm-hmm. The stronger our communities are, the more, love and grace we show one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Advantage of us.
Exactly. And honestly, like, with that, like, how much harm can truly come for us if we're a collective and it's like one person throwing a rock at a fucking giant house versus like the rock hitting like a single blade of grass.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that like with all of this, we hope that you take what we're saying and like apply it and go out and like don't just like listen but actually hear our words, because we're literally fighting against billion-dollar propaganda machines. They want us to be uninformed. They want us to be distrusting. And, like, the most radical thing we can do is trust each other and, like, come together in the face of everything.
And another thing I think is, like with the newspaper notice this morning, if you see a notice in your newspaper and you don't understand it, don't just leave it at that. Go ask somebody questions. Like, yeah. Find somebody, like, go to your library and see, like, can you look this up for me? Can you help me?
Sure. What do you guys know about this? Have you seen this notice?
Yeah. Email us at sauceand.solutions@gmail.com. Seriously, we will respond. Like, if you find something about like environmental issues and you are unsure, we will respond. We'll do research and give you some guidance and help you. Like, we are a resource as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we should talk about maybe, or something I'd like to talk about, stems people could search, to find these things in their town, like local environmental reports. You were saying the SIP report. People could go to TCEQ. What are some other good ideas?
Yeah, I think that, like, specifically depending on the state or country you live in, there is an environmental regulatory board in every state. Ours is called TCEQ in Texas. I don't know what the Florida one is for y'all, but I know they exist. You can always go to their website, and they're usually organized by air, water, permit, all the different categories, and you can start from there. And they always have people that you can find directly. The EPA might be a little touch and go depending, but I think going locally is always going to be your best option. And you can literally look up Environmental Regulatory Board Texas, Environmental Regulatory Board Hawaii, and it will come up with their website. And you'll know, one, you should see an HTTPS for it, and also it should be a .gov domain. If it is not a .gov domain, don't click on it, please. Governmental websites are .govs.
I found it. It's the DEP for us.
See, there you go. If you live in Florida, it is the DEP.
FloridaDEP.gov.
Yeah, and I think another thing is like looking up even what kind of industries are in your town, or what kind of industry is next door to you. If you happen to live close to one, like, look up the name and it'll tell you what they're producing, because like what they're producing is going to affect what you're breathing in. Like, if it's a petroleum plant, you're going to be breathing in like vapors. If it's like processing like carbon black, for example, then there's particulates. Like if it's natural gas, they're going to have a natural gas flare. Each of these industries will typically have something that gives information, and this is one that you will likely have to do some digging, because obviously not everyone's going to be very open about what they're doing. But in the Environmental Regulatory Board, there should exist a way for you to search specifically by industry, and it'll tell you what they're emitting. There are some regulations, this is speaking to Texas specifically, where they are required to put it publicly for us to be able to access. So they have things like what they call emission events. And emission events is a term that they use for any emission that exceeds what your regulatory allowance is, that is basically not required to be under regulation because of such and such reason. So like in my hometown, I look it up occasionally, there was like 52 one year. And they'll have things like excess opacity, excess emissions, flare was running at different temperature or something. It has information like that. Obviously, you have to do some digging, but if you are interested, the information does exist.
Yeah, and you can use CRAAP to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And CRAAP to find.
No, like seriously, it's a great method to find trustworthy, good resources. And just to end us off on it, CRAAP stands for currency, relevance, accuracy, authority, and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can answer all of those questions and they all come from legitimate sources, then you have a good resource on your hand.
And I think with science, the P should be easy, right? Anytime we're looking at objective scientific research, the P should be truthful, accurate information and data. And, any other purpose, scary.
It is scary. If it serves an idea, like, honestly, I know I keep saying we're going to end, but I have more to say. If you are reading something, I always ask myself, who is benefiting from this information? Who would be and this is just a me thing, but I do think it works. Who's benefiting? What ideology does it serve? Is it serving a religious dogma, a political dogma, whatever? And also, who is, again, financially going to benefit? Who is this article and me believing this thing going to make richer? And usually when you start to ask yourself that, you begin to realize, oh, I'm not going to believe this because it is going to profit no one except for XYZ for XYZ reasons. And then, I don't know. Just a thought.
And if you live near a factory, another good question is, where do the people making the most money from this factory live? Mm-hmm. And I bet you it's nowhere near the darn factory.
Yeah, like in South Africa, they literally had uranium workers living on uranium mounds, and you could see apartheid from space, actually. If you look on images, I'll include them, or we'll include them on our YouTube video. You can see the shanty towns at the bottom of the uranium heaps, and then the white colonizers essentially living on top away from the radiation. It was to the point where they would literally hand wages through a huge glass sheet so that way they would not interact with the radioactive slaves, because they were slaves. They didn't know, and a lot of the people that benefited from these practices are actually the ones funneling most of the money into our government. So just a thought, always question where the money's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
Yeah, is that it? Do we?
I think that's everything. I think we ranted for long enough.
Did we do an episode?
Well, let's do our outro.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And if you would like to learn more, we will have resources about CRAAP on our references and our link tree on Instagram. And I will also actually provide the report on my hometown. Anybody who's interested, it's 400 pages long. I don't recommend, if you don't have the time, don't worry about it, but it's a sample of what these documents look like. And it's publicly available information. So I'll be putting that out there for everybody to get a taste of what they should be looking for if you are concerned about something in your town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you guys. We're so excited that we're actually at 11 episodes. We'll be at episode 12 next week. Thanks for following us along. And we look forward to talking about acid mine drainage with you next week.